Saturday afternoon, March 7th, reporting from Houston, and also joined by the usual suspects. Johnny, how's it going?
Hey, yeah, it's a good movie too. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And also by our other usual, Rahul, how's it going?
Good man. Hey, I know it was your birthday a few days ago, so happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Word on
Thank
the street is you don't even remember what happened.
you.
Oh,
Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, sounds like it'd be hard to tell about if I don't remember it.
Just make it up. There's, I
But
mean,
yeah, from what I heard, is pretty crazy.
oh yeah?
Came home, pounded 2 beers, and that's about all I remember. So
Wow.
yeah, I know it's pretty crazy.
Slow down there. Jeez.
Yeah, I woke up outside in a roadside ditch.
Oh, that was me. That was me. Sorry about that. I moved you
Oh,
out there. Yeah,
cool. You left me the blanket, so I appreciate that.
I do what I can.
Just before we get into things, I have a killer joke. Actually,
Oh,
no, it's pretty bad. I need to set the bar low because when you set it too high, then expectations are never met. So, I have a question. What kind of bagel can fly?
mm,
let's think about this. We can get this, Johnny. Come on, there's not that many kinds of bagels.
true.
I can't think of it, man.
Yeah.
It's a plain bagel.
Ah,
Wow.
worse.
Wow.
Yeah,
Man, that was the
overlooked
most,
classic.
yeah, most obvious kind of bagel, too.
Yeah,
You
all
say,
that came to my mind was sesame.
yeah. Plus, you say bagel weird, too, so that doesn't help. It kind of distracted me.
Yeah, there's a scarring moment in my life where I can't really say the name anymore without cringing. So
Bagel, 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 bagel.
anyway,
Inside jokes.
so the Cavs over the past week went 2-2, including losses to the Rockets and the Hawks, and then wins back-to-back against Boston and Toronto. So either of you get a chance to catch any of the games?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead,
I
Johnny.
caught the
Start it up.
Houston game and then most of the Hawks game, I guess.
You want to give us a little recap and maybe anything that stood out to you?
Uh, yeah, sure. So for that Houston game, it's a pretty entertaining game. Obviously LeBron got a lot of flack for his free throw shooting late in that game, which yeah, I mean he was like 3 for 11, but I mean it's one game and maybe something was. And he's sometimes as former basketball, you know that sometimes like some things. Some days are rougher than others, just your shots off and everything. So I don't think that's too much of a concern. I mean, it was without Kyrie Irving in that game, so it was good to see us compete well. With Harden, who uh, took a little flack too for giving a nice knee to LeBron or whatever he did. So yeah, we lost that one in OT, which was tough to do that. Yeah, and then that Hawks game last night. The Hawks came out ready to play like right away. First quarter, they jumped on us early, and they were up by 10 most of the first half, and then we kind of rallied in the third quarter with LeBron and everything, and we were able to get it back to a pretty close game until the end, where they kind of just pulled away. And LeBron basically after said he sucked because he had 9 turnovers in that
Oof.
game. So yeah, that was rough. He was also yeah it was the Hawks are for real, and it could be a Eastern Conference finals preview. I think that would be a very entertaining series.
Oh yeah.
and I think it could go either way and potentially to 7 games. I know in that Celtics game we were up by like 40 pretty much the whole way, which I was kind of surprised to see considering how the Celtics were playing. So that's good to see. And then another game where we in Toronto where we take care of things. So overall, it was a decent week, kind of what we expected: 3-1, 2-2. Rahul, what did you catch any of these games? Do you have any other thoughts on what happened?
Yeah, I caught most of them, and I guess 2 points that stood out to me are that like later in the season, I think it's getting to the point where like it's like getting that playoff feel for a lot of these games, and when that happens, like when a team plays the Cavs, I think they all give like 120%. They're all better than they would be against some other team. And when you're playing teams like Houston and Atlanta, and they're coming out with even more energy than normal, it's just hard, It's hard in the course of the season to win all of these games. So I think that's starting to weigh on the Cavs a little bit. And the other thing is, I think in 3 out of these 4 games, every game except the Boston game, LeBron's been kind of been targeted a lot, right? We talked about with James Harden.
Yeah, with
and
the
his
flagrants.
Yeah, and then Toronto, it was Valanciunas
Yep.
that kind of dragged him down and got a flagrant, and then Atlanta was just kind of an overall physical game. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of that type of basketball. I think at the beginning of this week we predicted 3-1, so I guess we took the Houston game a little too lightly, but I don't think it's anything to be too concerned about. Kurt, anything exciting to add?
Yeah, just reiterating about the Houston game. When we talked about it last week, we didn't know that Kyrie wasn't going to be playing, and that certainly would have helped a lot. So, yeah, that was a very winnable game. Probably really shouldn't have lost it.
But Dellavedova was playing, so don't quite see your point.
Oh my goodness, I don't want to know what the stats from that game were. But yeah, I mean, pretty much the worst case scenario for the week was 2-2, and we hit that. And losing in Atlanta, it was pretty competitive for at least after halftime until the end of the game. So it's really not a bad or concerning result. It would be an awesome matchup in the playoffs, assuming that we both get far enough to face each other. But looking forward to things, we actually have all 4 games coming up this next week are on national TV, even though 3 of them are on NBA TV, including tonight at home versus Phoenix, then at Dallas, then at San Antonio, and then finishing up on next Sunday with a game at Orlando. So, Rahul, you want to give us a prediction on the week? Maybe who you think our toughest game will be?
Yeah, could you repeat the games after? I have Phoenix, Dallas, San Antonio, and then what'd you say the games after that were? Sorry.
Just the Magic.
Just the Magic. Okay. Man, I'm looking at it, and after going 2-2, I think a 4-0 week is definitely possible. This Phoenix game's at home, and after losing to Atlanta last night, I don't think the Cavs are in the mood to lose to Phoenix at home. So I would chalk that up as a win. We should have gone to that game, Johnny. What are we doing?
Yeah. Damn.
And then
Hey,
Dallas.
Go.
What's that? You want to still go?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about it after this.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Hit up StubHub.
All right, yeah. Or Flash Seats, too, is good.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Dallas has just had a tough schedule lately. I think they lost to Portland recently and maybe Golden State last night, if I'm not mistaken. So I think we should beat Dallas, too. I feel like they're one step down from the top tier in the West. And they just lack a little bit of firepower. San Antonio's had its struggles, but they're obviously a very scary team, and there's a little bit of history with San Antonio and LeBron. So if I had to pick a game we were like most likely to lose, I'd say it's that San Antonio game. And then Orlando. I mean, come on, right? So I'm gonna predict 4-0. Johnny.
Yeah, I also look at it as a possible 4-0 week, but I would lean more towards 3-1 just with that San Antonio game. They've been playing well actually lately. They've won 4 in a row, so I think they're kind of hitting their stride and getting finally healthy. So yeah, I look at that Phoenix game, and those are the kind of games that we really shouldn't lose. Yeah, Dallas, like you said, has been struggling. I think that's still weak. I mean, Dallas is still capable of playing a good offensive game and everything. So hopefully our defense is up to par with that. Otherwise, if Dallas gets going early, I think they could be dangerous too. But yeah, I see 3-1. I think the Spurs would be a tough matchup, and the one person in the league that can guard LeBron as well as KD and all the other big stars, I think, is Kawhi Leonard. So if Kawhi plays LeBron tough, then obviously Kyrie will have to up his production, and I don't see Kevin Love getting the best of Tim Duncan. So, yeah, I'd be impressed if we is the San Antonio game away or home? Do you know?
It's away. San Antonio.
It's away, yeah. So if we go into San Antonio and beat them by 10 or 15, I would be shocked, and that would be a really impressive victory. But I see that as a tough one. So I see 3-1 for the week. Kurt, what do you think?
Yeah, this Phoenix game tonight, I know it's at home. They're actually coming off a pretty big win yesterday against the Nets in overtime. It was pretty ugly for the most part, and they were down by a lot at the end of the game and kind of just came roaring back. They don't really have a lot of room for error if they want to make the playoffs. I think they have to go something probably around 15-4, 15-5 the rest of the way just to make it in. So that's going to be a very, very difficult game tonight. Not to mention that they're obviously just talented and young. But yeah, I don't think we're going to lose second game in a row, even because luckily that they're coming off of a tough game themselves. They had to play some extra minutes. A very emotional game. Then with several days of rest until Dallas, and Dallas not having Chandler Parsons. Not really sure who they have to guard LeBron. They have Al-Farouq Aminu has been playing a lot. He's actually not bad at all, but he doesn't really have the muscle to do anything against LeBron. And then the Spurs, I think it's just when you look at it, it seems like kind of like a matchup nightmare. Where they have Kawhi and then also Tim Duncan on Kevin Love, not only for defense, but there's no way in hell that Kevin Love can do anything guarding Tim Duncan when Kevin's on defense. So that matchup will probably be pretty interesting. Could see, hopefully Kevin can. That's a game where we need him to stretch the floor. If they have Duncan at the 4 and Thiago at the 5, and Thiago and Mozgov are kind of just going to cancel each other out. But yeah, I expect us to lose that too. So I'd say hopefully we go 3-1, but I wouldn't be surprised if we went 2-2.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. I'm interested to see what the matchup is going to be like in San Antonio. I wonder if we put Mozgov on Duncan, because Thiago is not really an offensive threat for the most part, so you could kind of hide Kevin Love on him. But in order for us to win that game, Kevin Love needs to be on and needs to be hitting from the outside too, so we can kind of pull Tim Duncan out from under the basket.
Yeah,
I think that's the key. Johnny, you brought up Kawhi Leonard and how he's able to guard some of these unguardable players.
Yeah.
It got me thinking, Who do you guys think is the most unguardable player in the NBA right now?
Wow. I'd say James Harden.
James Harden.
Yeah, I would say Harden or even Westbrook now. Just this past month, I would say Westbrook.
Yeah.
But Harden just gets to the rim so easily, and he just is able to like draw fouls, and like his handle and his step backs and everything is pretty much unstoppable. So yeah, I would lean towards Harden, but Westbrook is also up there.
Yeah, and that's why I'd say Harden too, mainly just because he has that step back.
Yeah.
Can get separation on anybody. So if it's somebody bigger than him, he's gonna blow by, and if it's somebody smaller, he can step back or can probably just beat them up down low. Where Russ is more of like when he like does his little like full out sprint and then stop on a dime pull up at the elbow, like nobody can really get in the way of that, but people at least have like a chance of contesting it, and he makes less intelligent basketball decisions. So sometimes he kind of makes it easier to guard himself by by being inefficient and throwing up bad shots when he doesn't need to. But
Yeah.
then again, when you look at last year in the playoffs and Harden not getting foul calls, then things become interesting. So that'll be something to look forward to for sure. If he's not getting any calls, then he becomes pretty guardable because he just gets hacked all the time, and it's hard to score and you're getting hacked. So
Yeah, that makes sense. And well, speaking of Harden, I don't know if you guys heard the story that came out maybe a few days ago. Kind of over the course of the season, general manager Daryl Morey for Houston has been promoting James Harden as the league's MVP, and he's done it, pretty often. And then Steve Kerr, coach for Golden State, came out and said that it wasn't his job to tout James Harden as the MVP, and that Steve Kerr himself had different goals, and Golden State had different goals, basically saying that he's not touting Steph Curry as the MVP. So my question to you guys is, do you think that a coach or a GM should promote like their players for like individual awards like the MVP, or is Steve Kerr right on this? Johnny, you want to start us off on it?
Yeah, sure. So I think the short answer is no, that the numbers and the player themselves should speak for themselves, and like their play and everything should be able to, tell people like if they're the MVP or not. So I don't think it's necessary to necessarily promote your players in that way. And yeah, I see like Steve Kerr, what he's saying. The focus should be on a championship, and yeah, it's great that James Harden is having a great year and everything, but I just don't think it's necessary to promote his play when he's playing at an elite level, and everyone seems clear that he is doing that. So yeah, I think the focus overall should be on a championship and not on, the individual awards or that kind of thing. So yeah, Kurt, what do you think?
I I really don't have a problem with it, as long as it's not like the coach doing it. So I think the coach should be focused on other things, but not that the GM shouldn't. But I don't really have a problem with it. I think it's kind of just, I mean, he's kind of like tooting his own horn, I think, being like, I got this guy away from Oklahoma City. Look how good he's turned out. Like, I think he's basically saying, like, I'm awesome at my job. Which,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with a little gloating every here and there. But sort of like what Steve Kerr said, I thought it was pretty interesting that he, like, went out of his way to mention it. Kind of seemed like he was taking a stab at Morey, saying that all he cared about was like picking up good players and having them do well, but not necessarily caring about how well the team does.
Yeah.
Kind of what it seemed like that the focus of Houston is to get James the MVP and not to win.
Mhm.
So I kind of had a thought of that was pretty interesting because Steve seems like a pretty nice and like classy guy. That seemed like I'm not sure why he took the shot there. I don't know if there's like bad blood between the teams. I mean, I'm sure they don't like each other because they're both competing for the same goal. But no, I mean I don't have any problem with what Morey said. Like I think he can just do whatever he wants. I'm not sure how much promoting James Harden as MVP. Like I don't even know who votes on it exactly. There are probably a lot of different sports writers that get to do that, and I'm sure him promoting James has hardly any impact on any of the voters' views because they kind
Mhm.
of just they're gonna look at it. Hopefully, they're gonna look at it from like an unbiased perspective and take everything into account and not be like you know it's not like the All Star contest where Drake was trying to get Kyle Lowry in and actually didn't end up helping him at all. But so no, yeah. Long story short, I have no problem with it at all. Rahul, what do you think?
Yeah, I really don't have a huge problem with it either. I think it's just so common, like, and I don't really think it detracts from like the goal of the team. Like David Blatt saying that LeBron James should be the MVP isn't gonna like mess up their game plan for the next game, you know. Um, but going into what you said, there is a lot of bad blood between those teams, and I think that's why Steve Kerr said it. Like, I don't think Steve Kerr has a huge problem with Daryl Morey actually saying it. I just think that they're rivals. And like for one thing, I think like the Warriors always dominate that series with Houston. And then I don't know if you guys remember this, but before like the Houston and Golden State game, they caught James Harden on camera trying to pump up his team by saying that the Warriors aren't that good.
Uh,
Um, and like I think that stuck with a lot of the Warriors,
yeah.
especially Steve Kerr. And then, sure enough, the Warriors went on to destroy Houston that game. So I don't have a problem with it. I enjoy the story, though. I think it's entertaining to watch.
Yeah. So that actually just made me think of something
Yeah.
to ask both of you. If you were looking outside in on the NBA, so like it's semi-dedicated, not just a casual fan, but like somebody like us that follows the game, knows the stats, like follows the standings. If you had to pick a team that you think is the most disliked in the league, would you say it's Houston, or is there somebody else that comes to mind? Because for me, when I think of that team, I feel like that's a kind of like a them against the world mentality, where people just they're not big fans of players on that team, especially Dwight, but also Patrick Beverly with the whole Russell Westbrook incident in the playoffs. And it seems like people aren't terribly fond of either. He's a bit of a whiner sometimes. So,
Yeah.
Johnny, would you agree with me on that, or is there another team that comes to mind that you think people, love to see lose?
Yeah, I guess I agree that Houston, is like that way, and you have like Dwight Howard on the team, and like guys that are not not the most popular, liked in the media and everything, and how they're perceived. I would also look at like the Clippers. I mean, they're on national TV a lot, but just like the way they play and the way they're perceived is kind of like dirty, and they have a lot of guys who complain about calls and everything. I'm not sure if like they're necessarily like the most hated team, but like I guess like the way they play in a way is like the most hated, I think. Just in terms of like they're always getting technicals and they're always playing dirty and complaining about calls. So I would look at the Clippers too as like someone like that, but I can't really think about anyone in the East really that has that kind of hatred and like.
Yeah, reputation.
So yeah, Rahul, what do you think?
No, I mean, I think you nailed it right on the head. Like the two teams I dislike the most are probably Houston and the Clippers. Um, so I agree. It's just the players that make up those teams. Like Dwight Howard is pretty much portrayed as kind of a big crybaby.
Yeah.
James Harden gets all these calls that a lot of players who play him don't really agree with because they feel like he's the one who instigates all this contact. And then with the Clippers, I'm not a Chris Paul fan. I think everybody knows that now. But like,
That much,
what's that?
that much is clear. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's just clear. I don't know. And then again, Blake Griffin. I don't know. I don't like Blake Griffin either that much. I just think it's one too many Kia commercials. So yeah.
State Farm.
Yeah, exactly.
God.
I'm a big Cliff Paul fan. He's great, but not so much Chris Paul.
Yeah. What do you think about Summer Bird?
Who's Summer Bird?
It's Sue Bird, but like she's in the Fab Five or whatever they call it.
Oh, that's right. Wait, so who's in that? It's Sue Bird or Summer Bird, Cliff Paul,
Darius Lillard.
Darius Lillard,
Don Stockton.
Yes.
and then Curry.
Yeah. What is his name? Sebastian.
Curry. Yeah.
Well, actually, yeah. Speaking of Lillard and State Farm, we actually made a move at the trade deadline to get Aaron Aflalo, which is appearing to be a great move. Just unfortunate for Wes Matthews. He's out for the year, and Aflalo will fill in nicely. But again, Wesley Matthews that's a big loss for that team. So, Rahul,
Yeah.
do you think the Blazers can still win a playoff series? How do you think they're gonna drop drastically? Maybe stay the same in the conference rankings? What do you see for Portland right now? They're tied for third with Houston, 7 games back of the 1 seed, and only 3.5 games up on San Antonio for the 7 seed. So, what do you think about Portland's chances with that West?
Well, I can see them maybe like switching places with Houston, but like we talk about the Clippers a lot, and they're like a pretty like flawed team. Like I think they just signed Nate Robinson as their backup point guard because they didn't really have a backup point guard. Other than Austin Rivers, who's not a basketball player. And then, like, they're kind of weak at the wing position, too. Like, Hudo Turkoglu's, like, playing big minutes for them right now. With Blake Griffin out, Spencer Hawes is playing a bunch. So, like, they're a pretty flawed team. We talked about Dallas earlier. Dallas is just – they're struggling against these top teams. They've lost 2 in a row. They're 5-5 in their last 10. San Antonio just doesn't care like where they end up as long as they're in the playoffs. So I don't think they're going to try to make like a big push or anything like that. And then I think Oklahoma City's just too far behind. Yeah. So I'd say like they might switch with Houston, and that's about it. And I think they could still win their first playoff series. I think like Dallas would be the team you want to play in your first round if you could choose. So I think they'll win their first playoff series still. But I think they'll lose after that. So I don't think much has changed, even though Wes Matthews is a really, really good player. Aflalo helps. Johnny?
Yeah, I think Wesley Matthews, he was having pretty much a career year. He was averaging like 16 points a game, and he was like pretty underrated, I think, in the league for what he did for Portland. So he was a good two-way player. He could guard multiple positions on defense, and then he obviously is a high 3-point shooting threat on offense. So I think they'll miss him a lot. And we mentioned the Aflalo trade, which definitely helps, but then that also kind of diminishes their bench, because you look at their bench now, and Aflalo's going to be starting, and they lost Thomas Robinson and Will Barton in that trade. So all they really have is like Steve Blake and Chris Kaman really coming off the bench.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to hurt them, and I think they're going to drop a little bit. They've won 5 in a row now, but I think they'll drop off to probably, I would think, like the 5 seed. I see Houston moving up to the 3, and then maybe San Antonio making moves, and moving up as well. So if they do end up in that 5 spot, they could, I guess, play like the Clippers in the first round, which I think they still could with Aldridge and Lillard, still be able to squeak out like a first round playoff series win. But yeah, this definitely hurts, and yeah, I just feel bad for Matthews. He was having a great year, and this summer he could have got paid a lot more, I
Yeah.
think, if he wouldn't have got injured. A lot of people questioned. He was with 1 year, I think, with Utah, and then Portland signed him to a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people thought that was a bad contract and everything, but he's turned out to be a really solid player. So, yeah, overall, I think Portland will drop a little bit, and maybe they'll win a first round playoff series. What do you think, Kurt?
Yeah, not to be a dead horse, but I pretty much agree with both you guys. I'd say there's just no way that they're deep enough to win more than one playoff series, regardless of where they drop exactly. Yeah, like you said with Lillard and Aldridge, I think that's good enough to win you a series. Again, depending on I personally do not like them matching up with the Clippers. Assuming that Blake Griffin's back and healthy, I would not like that for them at all. But if they're playing like Dallas in the first round, that would be fine. Just mainly because Dallas, like you guys said, has been struggling. I'd love if somehow Portland and Houston could play again.
Yes.
Because that was awesome. I'm sure there's a lot of bad blood there. The Lillard walk-off series 3-pointer, that was awesome. So that's what I'm hoping for. So I'm hoping that they drop down to maybe I hope somehow they drop down to 6 because I agree. I think Houston is going to end up with the 3 seed. Apparently Dwight Howard's not being missed very much, but yeah, I tend to agree that one series is just going to be their max, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they lost in the first round and even dropped to like the 6th seed. So touched on a lot of the teams in the West now. This is a team that I know personally I had higher expectations for, that have just fell completely short, and that would be the Nuggies.
Oh.
It's just been an absolute disaster of a season.
Well, just to clarify, Nuggies are great. The Denver Nuggies aren't great. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is true.
Right.
We're talking about a team that just in 2013 in that NBA season, they were 57-25, and then last year things kind of fell apart. Everyone on their team got injured, and they still ended up winning 36 out of the 82 games. And then this season just it just completely went off the deep end. So yeah, they're fired. Brian Shaw got fired. He is possibly going to be the new coach of the Magic. So I'm not exactly sure what our plan to talk about this was, but I this is something I've thought about for a while, and that is that it seems like in professional leagues that, especially in the NFL and NBA, that a coach coaches somewhere and then they do terrible, he gets fired, and then he gets shipped to another team. And I'm thinking of like Byron Scott, with the Hornets, that like he did well for a while and they fell off. Then the Cavs hired him, did terrible. Then the Lakers hired him. It seems like these coaches that aren't doing well just kind of get passed around from team to team. So if Brian Shaw is hired by the Magic, do you guys think that he's a guy that can lead? They have a bunch of young talent. Is he a guy that can lead that team? And maybe not next year, but the year after that to like a playoff berth, or is it kind of just like recycling old garbage and not really getting anything for him? Just kind of moving a guy from team to team. So Johnny, what do you think about Shaw and the Magic?
Yeah, I don't think Shaw is the answer for the Magic as a coach. I read a pretty interesting article that kind of looked at, I think it was Kurt Goldsberry on Grantland, that kind of looked at the value of coaches in the NBA. And he was kind of comparing, you have Brian Shaw, who was highly regarded as like a coach possibly in the hiring, and he was finally hired by the Nuggies. And then you have Mike Budenholzer, who in Atlanta, who's obviously having great success, and who worked under Popovich and everything. So yeah, the article it was interesting. It looked at how the league has kind of progressed over the years, and how the 3-point shot has become, increasingly important, and like I think it's become more used and more obviously important to have a lot of 3-point shooters, and the league itself has kind of morphed into this kind of spacing and the ability to move the ball really well, and that's what the Hawks do. And so you look at the Nuggets this year, and one of the main reasons for their struggles, if you want to call it that, is that they rank dead last in the league in like 3-point efficiency. So they've shot like close to 30%, which I mean, if you're not hitting the 3 ball in this league, I mean, you're not going to win too many games. If you just kind of rely on your defense, which was a strong point for them, when a few years back. But it's interesting to look at, coaching styles and how these different coaches kind of implement their offense and everything, and how really important like the spacing and like having the right players is to have success. You look at like Atlanta and like Damari Carroll. Like 2 years ago, he was shooting like high 20% from 3, and now all of a sudden he's become a really solid player for the Hawks and is shooting like closer to 40%. Is that a product of him just getting better, or I think it's more of like the system and like what Budenholzer has been able to provide. So, yeah, I think it's just a matter of sometimes you look at coaches and yeah, the players have a large influence, but I think coaches, also can have that influence, and I don't think Brian Shaw is going to help with the Magic. I mean, he just doesn't have the experience, and he doesn't have like the right like coaching style to lead them to like the playoffs or anything. So yeah, Rahul, what do you think about like coaching and their like influence and like Brian Shaw specifically?
Yeah, I like what you said at the end there. I think the problem with Brian Shaw is that he didn't adjust to his players. Like, I think like he tried to run a triangle for like part of the season, or I don't know if they still did when he was fired. But like for a triangle offense, you need like a solid post-up guy, and I can't think of that with Denver. I mean, can you? And
No.
with a team like Orlando that's so young like that, you can't expect young players to adjust to your style, right? You have to adjust to their style, which I don't think Brian Shaw can do very well. And that shows because they were 20 and 39 when Shaw was fired. So I think Shaw's like a good guy and stuff, and I think like around the league he's regarded as like a good person, but I don't know if he's the best coach. And like I don't think there's like a coaching shortage or anything like that where like Brian Shaw is like the last resort. Like think of a decent amount of names, like Scott Skiles would be all right, Mark Jackson, Tyronn Lue, Alvin Gentry, or like Mike Malone was fired from the Kings for God knows what reason. He's available. Yeah. I think all of those guys are better options than Brian Shaw right now.
What about Mike Brown?
Mike Brown. I don't know. I think he might have to start at like video coordinator again and work his way back up or something. Again, Mike Brown was. I don't know. I don't know what to say about Mike Brown. I'm just gonna ignore that. Kurt, your take.
Yeah, I actually, I again pretty much agree with you guys. I think that a lot of what coaching should be. Okay, so if you're looking at college basketball, it's fine to have a system and recruit players that fit your system because you have the ability to recruit and decide who's on your team. But when you're looking at the NBA, the GM tries to get whatever talent they can in the draft, and you usually just inherit a team not necessarily have anybody you want, but it's not like college where you can just wait until everyone leaves and pick your individual pieces. You kind of got to adjust to what you have. And, the Nuggets really, there's no reason that they should have been as bad as they were. Absolutely, I'm not saying they should be a playoff team. Maybe George Karl was a much better coach than, people realized. Or, maybe people are just used to it because he had a lot of success and that his teams are always did pretty well, at least in the regular season. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's not like, a Lionel Hollins when he had a great year with the Grizzlies and, didn't get as far as they wanted in the playoffs and they let him go. It's not like a guy, they might be picking up a guy that has had success before. It's a guy that hasn't had success. And, maybe that's good to try to grow with a young team like that. Maybe they'll respond better to him. I guess only time will tell. But as far as being somebody that's gonna change the franchise and be like somebody who's gonna lead them to the playoffs, 5 or 6 years in a row or something like that. I know it's of course early to say, but it doesn't really seem like he's gonna be that kind of guy. So, I guess mainly just time will tell.
Cool. All right, let's talk about a recently developing story then. So recently the NBA said it's considering spacing out the season a little bit more. I know a lot of coaches and players have been concerned with kind of the amount of toll back-to-backs and tough compact schedules take on players' bodies. So an idea has been floated around that the season would be extended until July. A lot of people seem to like this. I know Greg Popovich was one person that spoke out against it. So, Kurt, do you think that they should extend the season, and if so, why?
Yeah, I think seems like a pretty reasonable idea. From what I saw, a team usually plays, I think, between 16 and 20 back-to-backs over the course of a season. So if it's, if the reason that they're doing this is because they want to have better competition because players have more time to recover in between games and things like that, and players will be more motivated to go, and not only that, but actually have practices and be able to develop maybe a more complex playbook, then I'm all for it. These guys are getting paid enough money that I don't think they can be too upset if they if you they're gonna have. I think the only players would be upset is maybe they think they deserve a summer off, but realistically, with how much they're getting paid, they're gonna have plenty of time off anyway. Especially half the teams don't even make the playoffs, and then not many teams have to play much into May, and then the season doesn't really start for several months after that. So I think it's fine. I think it's great if it increases the level of play. It's not like they're gonna drag it out and then add an extra 20 games or anything ridiculous like that. So I think it's a pretty good idea. Johnny, what do you think about extending or spacing out the season rather?
Yeah, I think it is a decent idea to eliminate some of those back-to-backs and eliminate some potential for some of these injuries, and the level of play kind of goes down if you're on your fifth away game in a row or something. I think overall the league, although they probably won't do this, needs to reduce the games from 82 down to 70 or something. I just think 82 games is too many. Yeah, and I think the season itself is pretty long, but and extending it in favor of having the same number of games but a little longer stretch, I wouldn't be too opposed to. But I just think the overall number of games and then the playoffs drag on, I think, a little long. So yeah, that's my take. Rahul, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe like instead of stretching things out, you could just cut the number of games within the same time period.
Yeah.
Um, I think this isn't a bad idea. You just have to consider, like, in this day and age, like, lots of players, guys like LeBron, like, it's almost like basketball is like their part-time job because they have, like, endorsements or they want to play, like, FIBA, or I guess every 4 years there's the Olympics. Um, People do movies, people do commercials, TV show. Like, there's a lot to consider. So if they can figure a way out, like, kind of around those loopholes, then I don't think it's a bad idea. Because, yeah, you're right, the quality of game does go down. And the other thing is, it'd be good because we'd have something to write about in July or June or whatever. So um, it'd give us something to do because no one wants to read about the Indians or the Browns right now. So, yeah, I'm all for it. So.
Yeah, so I guess going along those lines and kind of like what Adam Silver and the league has kind of proposed in that sense, they're also the union specifically of NBA players has kind of came out and said that they want the age limit in the NBA to be lowered to 18, while I guess the league and Adam Silver himself is actually, so the league age limit now is 19, and the league and Adam Silver actually want to bump that up to 20. So it's kind of two conflicting views there. So I guess, Kurt, to start us off, do you think, given this news, that they should decrease or increase the age limit in the NBA or just keep it at 19?
Personally, I think that if they want to lower the age to 15, I think that's fine. I mean, it's an interesting debate. I understand that it's hard to send an 18-year-old, basically like a high school graduate, who goes from working at a Wendy's or something like that, as a part-time job, making minimum wage, to making, $50,000 a week or something like that. So that's interesting, certainly. But I think that also, if somebody's good enough to play in the league, I think that they should be afforded that opportunity regardless of, how old they are. I don't think there's suddenly, this magic transition between being 18 to being 19. So, I mean, I think players should be able to forego college if they'd like to. It might not necessarily be in their best interests to do that. Maybe if they stayed in college a couple of years, they would get drafted higher. But that's always going to be, that's still an issue today, where there are these college freshmen that, just pretty much go, to a school maybe like Kentucky is probably the most notable, and they go there, and most people know that their intent is just to stay there for 1 year and leave. So, and I'm sure that, I don't want to say anything I don't know about, but academics probably, for the ones that want to stay one and done, they're not really at their forefront. So I don't think they're necessarily gaining a whole lot out of it, aside from just having to wait another year to start making a lot of money. So with that being said, I really don't. I think that there doesn't necessarily need to be an age limit, but if there's going to be one, I think that they should lower it to 18 is fine with me.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree. I think I don't understand the reasoning for wanting to up the age. Like, I don't think the system's broken right now. And like you said, Kurt, there's not like a magical jump from when you're 19 to when you're 20 where something changes. Like, it's good that the NBA is thinking about these kinds of problems, but if you really want to solve them, you got to like tackle them at their root. And instead of messing with these like the age limit, maybe like look into some kind of like, I don't know, like financial advising or something for these players that come into the league, so they don't kind of blow their money right away.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I mean, LeBron came into the league when he was what, like 18,
Yeah.
and like those were like 2 really good years for him. And like if we up the age to 20, like we would have lost those 2 years. Like a lot of players are pretty successful like at a young age. So I don't think you can just generalize and say that 18-year-olds are immature and that we need to raise the age limit. I
Mm-hmm.
think either it's good as it is, or maybe you could say like 1 year of college or 18 or something like that. But I would just keep it how it is. I don't see a need for a change. Johnny?
Yeah, I kind of echo your guys' thoughts, and yeah, I mean, you look at other professions, and if you're 17, 18 years old, and want to create a startup or do something, or become a singer or something, you're able to do that. But if in the NBA, you got to wait till you're 19 and everything. So yeah, I kind of agree with most of your guys' points and everything. Yeah, I think it's silly sometimes to have someone just attend college for a year and then turn pro. And yeah, I think you guys hit on most of the points there. I'm not sure what the league's plan for this is, or like what their how much time they're gonna take until they consider like a change or something. But yeah, I think it's fine if they just keep it as it is or even lower it. I know there's other sides of it also to increase it, which I'm not sure where the main argument there is, but yeah, I guess um, looking at the NBA in its entirety, we've spoken about a lot of good things happening in the NBA, but I guess reflecting on this year's season a little bit more, we're kind of almost coming to the end here.